And Top Story is always brought to you by Vodafone. Together we can. It has been fireworks on the floor of Parliament, with the chairman of the Finance Committee causing a stir as he accuses his own colleagues and Parliament of failing to show leadership in cutting costs and superintending over the waste of taxpayers' funds. He alleges Parliament was engaged in rampant sole sourcing of costly, glossy calendars. He's demanding an immediate cut in parliamentary expenditure so Parliament will show leadership as the country battles with a huge and ballooning debt and a deficit. There's been swift reactions to this, mixed in fact, from the floor. But today has been one for the cameras indeed, with both sides at each time on each other's throats because of confusion surrounding who was to speak. Well, there've also been accusations and counter-accusations of what the economy currently is and its nature, including allegations that the economy is sick and is in the intensive care unit. All that pretty shortly on day one of this highly anticipated debate on the budget. But first, listen to the controversy stirred by the chairman of the Finance Committee, Kweku Kwati, when he got his turn to open the debate.
Mr. Speaker, we as Parliament must also lead by example. Are there ways, Mr. Speaker, are there ways the leadership of Parliament can cut costs as Ghana seeks to bridge the gap between our revenues and expenditures? Mr. Speaker, are there ways that this House we can lead by the example? The Speaker reminds us all the time that we are the representatives of the people. Mr. Speaker, Parliament should not just oversight the executive, we must lead by example. Mr. Speaker, sole sourcing in parliamentary procurements. Are we going to deal with sole sourcing procurement by this House? Is this something as a House we would like to not just oversight the executive? Is this something that we should do? Mr. Speaker, should we continue, for example, to procure these glossy calendars and glossy diaries year on year for Parliament, for which we have very little utilization? Mr. Speaker, it is not enough for members of Parliament to be out there calling out the executive and asking the executive to demonstrate commitment to fiscal prudence. We ourselves must set the example. Mr. Speaker, I must go on. I can go on and on and on. But I pause here. Mr. Speaker, we can even add, Mr. Speaker, that it is time to cap the number of members of Parliament for the Republic of Ghana. It is time to cap this House. We cannot continue administration after administration, be creating districts, be creating constituencies, be creating more members of Parliament, and to be increasing the budget. I am inviting my colleagues on the other side that we have come to a point where we need to call the spade a spade. Let us be committed to the things we are saying. Let us not just pretend that imposition of taxes is against the interests of the people, and therefore we side with the people, and we pretend that we will be out there supporting the people and rejecting government initiatives to deal with the gap, when we ourselves know that on our side, we do not want to lead by example. And as our colleagues from the other side get up to speak to this budget, Mr. Speaker, it will be helpful if we can demonstrate to the public that now that this is a new Parliament, we must be partners with government in cutting costs and in raising revenue. Under no circumstance should we pretend that it is the job of just the executive to cut costs. My solemn appeal to my colleagues of this House this morning as we consider this debate. It is, let us, for the love of our country, let us, for the concern we have for the economy of this country, let us approve this budget. Let us approve the interventions in the budget, and let us deal with a problem that has bedeviled our economy.
Let me take you to Parliament now for some reactions to this. Parker, rarely will you see members of Parliament themselves, of course, not least the chairman of the Finance Committee who opens the debate, levelling a lot of accusations against his own Parliament about printing of glossy calendars, sole sourcing and cutting themselves. What has been the reaction there?
And Evans, you should note that this is premised on the reaction of the minority in terms of opposing the revenue mobilization measures put in place by the governing NPP. And so the reaction has been quite interesting. In fact, let me start with the minority. They say that they agree in part what Kweku Kwarteng is saying, and the agreement is with the fact that we're in the 21st century, and so there wouldn't be the need for the calendars and the diaries and even the other paper on daily basis. They are printed, and even the proceedings before the day are also printed. And so this is where the minority agrees with Kweku Kwarteng. But here is the disagreement, that he is being insincere with the ordinary Ghanaian, because he, in 2017, defended the large government side or the huge government side. And today, you have people who have been employed at the presidency and being paid about 15,000, and there's an allegation from the minority, are being paid about 15,000, doing virtually nothing. So if you want a reduction in the size of government, then Kweku Kwarteng should summon the courage to tell the president to start cleaning his house first before he can come to Parliament. We can listen to Murtala Mohammed, who is the Member of Parliament for Tamale Central.
I will agree with some of the issues he raised. I have raised this issue that Parliament, we don't need to be dealing with papers any longer. At this age and time, we still have votes and proceedings which are written when we have a system in front of us that you can easily read the votes and proceedings. I have raised this issue that we now have WhatsApp groups as members of Parliament, that whatever we are supposed to discuss this morning could be sent to us through our WhatsApp platform. So I agree with him on that score. But the other aspects,
including the calendars and the diaries?
Yes, I think that is not necessary. As a matter of fact, how many of us even use the calendars and diaries that are given to us as members of Parliament? And I can bet my last minute that not many members of Parliament use the diaries and calendars. If the cost involved in it could be taken off, we should be thinking of doing that. The aspects of his call that I think is not based on principles, it is on just political, gimmickry, and I would describe it as such. He has been a deputy minister of state before, of finance. He has been a member of the finance committee in the CIF Parliament. I served in the same finance committee with him, and he consistently served in the finance committee, and today he's the chairman of the finance committee. When he was the deputy minister of finance, he saw the size of government under President Nana Addo. He never uttered a word. He defended the position of engaging needless people at the Flagstaff House and paying them huge sums of money. He defended it. Again, as we sit today, we have boys and girls at the Flagstaff House who sit just behind their laptops, and what they do is that they go on Facebook to malign and attack people just to serve the interests of the president. They are paid almost 15,000 Ghana cedis a month. He's not seeing anything about it.
They are paid 15,000 cedis a month?
He should tell us how much they are paid. I am saying that he, Kweku Kwarteng, defended the huge number of appointees and the government machinery. He defended it. So what has changed?
Well, Parker, the minority side, their debate was led by Dr. Tufosing, and he's also been causing quite a stir with the choice of language and the descriptions he put forward of the Ghanaian economy currently.
Evans, the ranking on the finance committee at Tufosing says the country or the economy is in the intensive care unit and suffering from what he calls sardosis. That was a new word he coined today on the floor of Parliament, essentially making the point that the NPP government has reduced the economy to nothing, virtually, again, with the imposition of the new taxes, impoverishing or further going to burden the ordinary Ghanaian. and even allege that the policy document, as we talk about now, lacks credibility because there are some inconsistencies. And again, the revenue target for the year 2020 is unrealistic.
So, Speaker, as we speak, the Ghanaian economy is in an intensive care unit. Mr. Speaker, permit me to diagnose the sickness of the Ghanaian economy. Mr. Speaker, to surprise you to know that the Ghanaian economy today is sick from what we call stagflation with acute debt overhang syndrome. In other words, you can call it sardosis. Mr. Speaker, I repeat, the Ghanaian economy as we speak is sick from stagflation with acute debt overhang syndrome. In other words, sardosis. Mr. Speaker, why am I saying so? Mr. Speaker, I say so for a simple reason. Stagflation is a situation in an economy where there is slow and jobless real sector growth that is accompanied with high unemployment and rising inflation. Mr. Speaker, we all know that as we speak, there is rising unemployment in this economy. In fact, unemployment has become a national security threat. Mr. Speaker, inflation is rising, obviously, as a result of food inflation because prices of food is going up. Mr. Speaker, again, prices of fuel at the pump is skyrocketing almost every window. And that is why this Ghanaian economy is witnessing what I call acute debt overhang. Mr. Speaker, this is the first time I've seen a budget statement that is projecting a tax revenue more than 45% over the base. 45%. In fact, since I became a Ghanaian, I've never seen anything like this. 45%. In nominal terms, this government is seeking to raise 25 billion Ghana cedis additional tax revenue. And so I was curious. Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to say that the estimations in the budget statement, what is before us, our tax revenue has been over-projected by 10 billion Ghana cedis, representing 2% of our GDP. 2% of our GDP. Where is your credibility, Honorable Minister? Honorable members, where is the credibility of this government? Where is the credibility of this government? This budget is the most inconsistent, wrongly estimated budget I've ever seen since I became Ghanaian. In fact, since Kwame Nkrumah went to Guinea. Mr. Speaker, I'm sad for a simple reason that this government is actually increasing the sickness of this country. Currently, we are sick from sardosis. Today, as a result of your wrong projections, if care is not taken, Ghana is going to be sick with sardosis too. And that will mean that we are going to move from intensive care unit to high intensive care unit in the emergency room.
Well, that's Dr. Tuforsi. He joins us on the telephone line right now. Dr. Forson, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you, Evans.
So what really is sardosis? Is it a word found in the dictionary, or this is Dr. Forson's creation?
Evans, it is a combination of stagflation with acute public debt overhang. And when you combine the two in a form of sickness, it becomes sardosis. It's a new word born in Parliament today.
Oh, okay. So this is your creation.
Recklessness.
This is your creation of the.
Yes, it's my creation. But stagflation is not my creation. Stagflation is an economic condition where there was low or slow, jobless real sector growth, consistent with high inflation and obviously high unemployment. That is what is called stagflation. But you see, in the case of Ghana, we do not only have stagflation. We have a special condition where we are seeing a public debt overhang. So that has actually accelerated the problems that we have in Ghanaian economy. Evans, it will surprise you to know that in the year 2021, this year, from January to December, the tax revenues that we have collected to date, we've spent 92% of the tax revenue only to service our interests. Obviously, for a simple reason that we have overborrowed. Even in nominal numbers, Government of Ghana has collected tax revenue of 37 billion Ghana cedis. Of this amount, we've spent 34.3 billion Ghana cedis just to service our public debt. That is the problem we have. It's called debt overhang. And now, I would have thought that government is taking, in fact, proper decisions in dealing with this tax overhang, debt overhang. But in the budget statement, I do not see anything like that.
You talk about the economy being in intensive care. We'll probably have sad doses too. But the IMF, on the back of the debt situation you painted, disagree with that assessment. In fact, in July,
oh, really?
let me quote to you what they said in July after Article 5 assessment report that they issued. I'm quoting here. The directors say, while noting that risk to Ghana's capacity to repay have increased, directors concurred that they are still manageable and that Ghana's capacity to repay the fund remains adequate. That is the IMF.
Evans.
How is an economy that has adequacy to pay and is manageable when it comes to debt in an intensive care?
Evans, we can tickle ourselves and laugh or smile, create impression that someone has said positive things about us, so we should continue to jubilate. If you spend 92% of your public debt, public revenue, tax revenue, for the purposes of paying your interest, and you think it's not a public debt overhang, and so you wait for someone to tell you that all is well, then it's over to you. Today, as we speak, we borrow to pay salaries. We borrow to buy fuel for the president to travel. We borrow to run the office of government. That is the situation we find ourselves today. And so the truth is out there. I will not need someone to come and tell me. But in fact, IMF, in the same IMF document, Article 4 in the same IMF document, they concur with what I'm saying, that Ghana is a country of high debt distress. In the same document, they said that as we speak, 2020, 2021, in fact, we borrow to pay our debt. That is the position of the same IMF. So please, IMF is a diplomatic institution, obviously part of the United Nations. So, they don't like to say things as it is. They may be seeing some of these things in the aid memoir that they will share with government. That is plain language. But a document, obviously, that they will share in public, you don't expect them to be brutal and factual and probably plain, as I'm putting it. But I'm a Ghanaian. I am a member of parliament. I am a sitting member of parliament. I have to say things as it is so that I will draw the government's attention to where we are going. This country is sick. We are sick from sardosis. In fact, if care is not taken, we will go to high intensive unit. That is what it is.
And that is what you call and that's what you call sardosis too.
That is sardosis too.
Let me bring in your colleague and friend Kwaku Kwarteng, who was also on the floor. Mr. Kwarteng, you caused quite a bit of stir today when you were brutally frank with your colleagues, accusing Parliament of not showing enough leadership in cutting, waste in the way Parliament does its work. You talk about glossy calendars that you sow sauce almost annually without checking how much of that you can save. Of that taxpayers' funds you can save. I mean, the accusation, aren't you wrong in directing this at Parliament and that this should be to government instead, as in the executive?
Well, I think I did indicate that the executive itself had indicated some revenue measures, some expenditure rationalization measures in the budget, and that we ought to be approving those initiatives, and we also ought to be holding the executive to account. But in addition to that, we as members of parliament should also lead by example. I've listened to Honorable Ato. And look, this country, if we're going to build it, we need to eschew hypocrisy. We need to be frank with ourselves. And we need to deal with the problems by the roots. Some of the points that Honorable Ato has made, some of them I agree with. But my problem with the way he presents this is that it is a problem of today. When he knows that when he was even the Deputy Minister for Finance, because of some of these problems, they carried this country to the IMF for policy credibility. Can we not be honest with ourselves and say that there are more fundamental problems affecting this economy, and therefore we would unite and fight these common fundamental problems. Instead of pretending, as Honorable Ato has attempted to do now, that somehow the economy that this administration and other administration met and an IMF bailout was good, and that it is this administration that has done. I find it hard as we grow to continue to indulge in this partisan analysis of our economy in a way that continues to impede our own ability to run ourselves and run our economy well. My conclusion, look, there's no doubt in my mind that over the last 5 years, that this administration has administered this economy better than the previous administration, if not for anything at all. The economy that we met in the hands of the IMF, we have exited. There's every indication that we are now able to now borrow because of the better indicators to retire more expensive debts that were incurred under the previous Mama administration. But I do not think it is sufficient for this administration to say that we have outperformed the previous government and so we are okay, because some of the issues Honorable Ato raises, we still have considerable debts, partly, of course, from COVID, but also partly because traditionally our expenditures are far higher than our revenues. And I hope that as we move on, we will get a political consensus that says, let us find out why we keep having this situation. And today I did quote the development of how much we used to pay, of our revenue we used to pay interest. And anybody who is honest to the facts, in fact, would come to the conclusion that fundamentally we need to be dealing with some of the problems. That is why I'm calling on Parliament. And my friends don't like it, They like it too because we want to be partisan. They like it to be another problem, an MPP problem. When we sit in Parliament and we see the waste, we don't want to do anything about it. The hypocrisy sometimes is too much. I think Parliament must lead the way. What Parliament is even asking for under this budget, what Parliament wants, the state that we say is in crisis, what Parliament wants for itself, we need to set good examples. So today, I was frank not just with Parliament, but I have come to a point where I no more enjoy the partisan exchanges. I have come to a point where I think that we owe it as a duty to our future generations to be frank. And in that frankness, I think Parliament must lead the way. That is why I suggested that we must be asking ourselves, how can Parliament itself reduce its cost?
Yeah.
Can we cut down on can we, at the minimum, cap the number of MPs we have? Can we reform Article 71 remuneration conditions? Can we not have frank discussion about these matters so that we can carry the citizens along?
On that point, is just last point. Let me ask you a personal question. You said recently on PM Express, and this is something that you've taken to Parliament now, that charity must begin at home. Let me ask you this. You've just talked about emoluments. All of you in Parliament got a handsome review of your packages. As Kweku Kwarteng, chairman of the committee, to set an example, what are you willing to forgo as your contribution to this?
Look, it is not a matter of what one person is willing to forgo. What I am addressing is factors that affect the very fundamentals of this economy. It's not a moralistic
I get that.
A crusade I'm embarking. If I can just finish. It's not about me in person. It does not make any difference if I said I would forgo mine and the arrangements that continues to escalate our expenditures against our revenues are still in place. I don't know what I achieve by that. What I am calling for is a proper reform of some of these arrangements so that in the end, the country's economy would benefit. That is what I can say to you.
No, that's fine. But you remember the principle you laid out on the floor today, leadership by example. So, you making the call. I'm asking again, what are you willing to forgo as your contribution to show that leadership that if you can do it, others can? What's that?
No, but under the current arrangements, what could I forgo? I cannot prevent Parliament from paying my salaries into my personal accounts. I don't know what you mean by what I am personally. Or if
let me give you an example.
Is paid to me, I am willing to give it to an orphanage, or that's the answer you're expecting.
Let me give you an example. The President of the Republic, 2 months ago, returned almost 300,000 CDs of what he got as a result of the increment to government chest. My question back, what are you willing to forgo?
Well, I might not be able to tell you right standing on my feet here, but I can tell you that I forgo a lot already because the money I collect, I may well have to give you the list of people I am sponsoring in school. I have to give you the list of those I'm taking care of. We can enter into that discussion. But I think it's a trivialization of the reforms we need as a country when we begin to turn it into what individuals want to forgo. We should reform the systems. As individuals, I think many MPs spend the money that comes to them on other things anyway. Some donate to orphanages, some are taking care of a lot of people. That's not what I'm calling for. Individuals should make their decisions. But the media should join progressive minds to begin to call for changes in those things that continue to escalate the gap between our revenues and our expenditures.
Dr. Forsing, same question to you. I recall you were with him on PMS when he suggested this. He said it on the floor of Parliament. I think you said to me that you agree that there should be cuts everywhere and government must cut too. Let me ask the same question of you. Are you willing to take your own personal cut as an example?
Evans, let me put it on record and on your show right now that me, as a person, I'm even ready to forgo to the extent that our ex gratia or even car loans are going to stay at the center for the purposes of the reforms we need as a country. But what is important is for His Excellency the President and the Vice President and his ministers to lead us into this conversation. It is important for the President to reduce his convoy anytime he's traveling because the fuel is indeed sponsored by the state. It is important for the government of the day to send in 300 and something people to Glasgow for the purposes of a conference because government of Ghana is paying for it. It is important for His Excellency the President to stop some of the luxury travels that he's engaging in. It's important. So you should indeed start from the top, not just the member of parliament. The executive control the largest of the budget, so they should lead by example and not necessarily shift it on the ordinary Ghanaian. But Evans, most importantly, we could talk about 2020 expenditure, 2019 expenditure. But it is a fact that Ghana's expenditure in the year 2020 is a complete outlier in the entire Africa. Most countries, the fiscal deficit in most African countries was 7%. On average, Ghana's fiscal deficit was 15.6%. Evans, the wages of sin is death, according to the Bible. In the same vein, I can assure you, the wages of election year expenditure is sardosis. And if you don't deal with it, this economy will crash into an intensive care unit. That is where we are.
I'm grateful, Dr. Tofosing. I'm grateful, Kweku Kwarteng, for your thoughts on this. What do you make of what you've just heard? Send me a WhatsApp, 055-1111-997. Should Parliament cut? Beyond Parliament, should members of Parliament, individuals begin to show, take some cue from returning of the money from the president, for example? Tofosing says he's willing to forgo his ex gratia, his car, etc. But the president the executive must show the leadership first. As citizens themselves, this is your taxpayers' funds. What do you think should happen now as we all carry the burden? Share with me your thoughts, 055-1111-997. Still ahead, fresh details emerged that the man who allegedly killed his girlfriend and hid her body in the refrigerator in the Volta region demanded the spare key to his room, which was then in the possession of his landlady.
So as I came here, the people followed me into the porch. So we went there.